Hello everyone and welcome to this video which is in our Great Engine Middlegames series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at the game between Igel and Leela 0 in the TCEC Season 22 Division P. So what we've got here is a typical Scheveningen Sicilian structure, pawns on d6 and e6, but there's a slightly unusual feature and it's the pawn on h5. 8h5 was a book move, but the engines didn't particularly seem to feel that there was much follow-up to it, so actually they've just developed normally and just basically ignored it. And in fact Leela takes that a step further with its next move, which is quite shocking, and that's castles kingside. Castles kingside, why not bishop takes h5, you might ask? Well, that's a very good question. Igel didn't play it, and neither did Stockfish nor Koivisto. When I ran my engine matches, I actually had to force them to take that pawn in order to see what they wanted to play. And in actual fact, there's nothing really very dramatic. Stockfish played knight a5 in this position, and after bishop e2, knight c4. Well, you know, we got some counterplay here. b5 was played. Stockfish didn't even try to keep its bishop pair, just played like this. Knight d2 and queen c6, and yeah, you know, I mean, for me it's just looking like white is just a pawn up, but Stockfish wasn't too pessimistic and drew this with consummate ease. With black, Koivisto played a little bit more violently, played d5 in the centre, takes knight b4, I mean actually offering more material in order to get activity. I mean, d takes e6, bishop takes e6 would be quite nice for black, with the rooks coming on here and pressure against all these points. But Stockfish gave some material back actually, played bishop d4, knight d5, bishop e5, takes, bishop e2, b5 check, king 8, knight d4, ba, and then pointed its pieces towards the king, and well, this position that they ended up with was quite nice for white, really. The double pawns look ugly, but they control a lot of central squares. The pawn supports the knight very well, and well, there is a slight worry about the black king side. You know, so in principle white was doing quite well here, you know, and Stockfish later beat Koivisto. But all the same, you know, this is not particularly clear. You know, it's there's hardly a refutation of bishop takes h5. Indeed, white seems to be better afterwards. So why don't engines play bishop takes h5? I think it's two things. I think first of all, there's a certain feeling that well, if black wants to protect that pawn on h5 later, then black will have to make some weaknesses. I mean, either play h4 when you know, the pawn can be just as easily attacked by bishop f2 or queen e1, or black will play g6, which will definitely weaken its king side. And I think there's this feeling, you know, from the white point of view, that this pawn is always up for grabs later, because the moves that black has to play to protect it aren't really helping. And I think also there's a big element of time, simply, that engines are very, very happy nowadays to give up a pawn just for a little bit of time. And you know, you see it in the Stockfish variation. After bishop h5, knight a5, bishop e2, knight c4. Well, white's played bishop takes h5, bishop e2. This has given black some lovely extra time in order to be able to get some queenside counterplay going. And what that means is that, you know, a kingside attack from white has really been averted. And I think, in particular, it's also to do with the nature of the pawn that you give up, because, well, it's one of the things commentated on in the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, that, you know, why are engines so happy to use rook's pawns to launch wing attacks? It just means that if you lose that rook's pawn, it's not causing a catastrophe in the rest of your position. It's not creating any holes or anything. It's the pawn right on the edge of the board. I mean, even after bishop takes h5, okay, you know, the king's position is weakened. You've only got 2 pawns instead of 3. But of all the pawns you could miss, this is definitely the one you could you could most easily do without. And I think that's, kind of the point that, in this type of position, Stockfish isn't seeing any particular danger to its king, and it's just seeing a reasonable amount of activity. And, it's not, obviously it's better for white, but it's not horrific long-term losing for black. But of course, what you do need with black is, sustained accuracy for long periods of play. I mean, it is very easy just to get into a position where your activity disappears, and then you're just a pawn down. And I think that's why human players have to be very wary of copying play like this. Simply because that sustained level of accuracy, playing well for black, for 30-40 moves on the run in order to keep the balance, that's kind of very difficult. But still, very, very interesting to just to see the objective evaluations, that the engines are giving after this stuff. So, I mean, Eagle played King H1. I think basically keeping that snack for a later date. I think that's the idea. And here Leela reacted with another pawn sacrifice, which was B5. Which I think really means that Leela was seeing long-term danger. Really, I think that Leela was thinking that if it didn't start breaking out now, then eventually it would get into a difficult position. So activity was really of the essence now, even more than material. And this is a very nice pawn sacrifice. B5 takes, and now bishop takes B5 from white, and now knight B4. And quite surprising in a way, that you offer a pawn sacrifice and then you offer straight away an exchange of pieces. After all, exchanging off pieces, isn't that what the person who's material ahead wants to do? And it's kind of true. Only the big thing about black's counterplay here is the light squares and this pawn on E4. So by swapping off the light squared bishops, black removes a good defender of the E4 pawn in the light squared bishop, which will make his counterplay even easier. And bishop D7 was actually a commonly chosen move by my engines in the engine matches, but it didn't lead particularly anywhere. So after queen takes D7, bishop D4, black's playing knight A2, very unusual resource there, but very nice indeed. So just weakening the defense of the E4 pawn. Rook E1, Rook B8, and this is pretty sort of Benko style, isn't it? Really, I mean, you've got rid of the pawns on the queen side, but you've got open files for the major pieces. You've got an E4 pawn to attack. Black's king is fairly safe, I mean, you might say maybe objectively this is a clear advantage for white, maybe, but proving it is really, really difficult. And let's just have a look at one game. I mean, both, Koivisto was drawing this quite often against Stockfish, and Stockfish against Koivisto as well. So it really does look pretty balanced. So E5 takes, knight H7, bishop C3 takes, knight F8, rook A1 takes, knight G6, and again, it's you've got two passed pawns on the queen side for white, but just hard to get them going. And of course you've got a weak e-pawn. So knight a5, bishop c5. I'll just show you the rest of this game because it was quite striking. h4, bishop e1, rook c8, and here white starts to get the pawns motoring. Has to give up the e5 pawn for it, but this looks, really dangerous. But here, I mean, I've just finished annotating the game Igel-Leela, and we see this same technique here. And we've got knight d3 here, king g1, g5, king f1, and then bishop takes c5. And commented on this also in the Silicon Road to Chess Improvement. I mean, the engines are very, very often resolving a defensive situation by going for a rook and pawns against rook and knight situation. Simply, the knight is just a very short range piece, and what it would really need to do is to help defend its pawns and attack the opponents. And it just finds a lot of difficulty doing that. It's quite different with a bishop, really. So, and here, Stockfish was already at 0.00, no problems here at all, and the game was drawn soon after. But, I mean, you can see, this just seems to be basically decent compensation for black. So, Eagle played bishop d3, queen b7, bishop d4, and now this move. Takes on d3, knight takes d3, and queen b4. And yeah, again, you know, black is a pawn down, but black's now got the two bishops, and we've got yeah, a knight on b3 in front of a pawn on b2. That's well, rather awkward, and actually this queen b4 move is quite irritating, attacking the bishop on d4. So white has to retreat. Rook a b8, knight d4, queen takes b2, and black has managed to recapture the pawn. There is one fly in the ointment though. It's this move e5, knight h7, queen h5. So this weakness of the h5 pawn has told in the end, and white has managed to maintain its pawn plus, you know, by targeting it. However, if you're looking at the rest of the position, black's got the two bishops, definitely space advantage for white, but pretty compact structure. Nothing disastrous is happening for black yet, and I think what you also have to mention is that black didn't just automatically capture it here, which would have you know, opened up extra lines for the white pieces against the king. Black very cautiously just kept the tension there and kept the pawn on f4, so the f file isn't opened, and nor is the c1 h6 diagonal for the bishop. So rook fc8, knight d2, queen b7. And I was sort of, I spent a lot of time looking at this position, and yeah, I think probably I didn't quite get to grips with it properly. Found some interesting ideas, but yeah, I think yeah, I was lacking some insight there. I mean, yeah, what we've said, you know, I mean, white's a pawn up, but the rook's pawn is not super crucial. It makes the black king a little bit weaker than it would be if the pawn was on h6, but it's not as if white's got any big attack there for the moment. And yeah, you know, obviously having kept the f file closed, the c1 h6 diagonal closed, you know, that's helping to keep a lid on white's attacking potential. You know, black's got the two bishops, and you know, white's light squares do feel a little bit loose. This pawn on d3. So actually having a light squared bishop here, you know, an unopposed bishop, is a pretty good thing for black. You know, it's not full compensation, I think, but it makes it pretty difficult for white to convert. I mean, I was looking at plans, you know, what seemed interesting. I mean, one idea would be to try and play knight e4 to g5, you know, just to try and open up the f file, open up something on the king side. Another idea I quite liked, which Leela did quite like as well, was to play the move d3 to d4, with the aim actually of giving up a pawn with d5 and then playing a bishop or a knight in there afterwards. You know, the idea is simply that give up your extra pawn in order to weaken the king side and give yourself some threats there. And this was actually, I think, Leela's. Well, Leela was reasonably happy with that. I mean, another idea was just bishop d4, which I also quite liked. Simply, you know, covering the knight on c3, very solid minor piece structure here, and pointing towards the king. I might be able to have e takes d6 at some stage. I was sort of assuming that d takes c5, f takes c5 won't be played because it opens up the f file. And I wasn't really sure how black was going to proceed here. But actually Leela showed some interesting ideas against this. I mean, after d4, yeah, Leela was actually playing this very concrete idea. Bishop c6, hitting f2, queen g4, and then bishop e4. And the bishop is stopping f4 to f5. And the idea is simply that knight e4, queen e4. You know, now that white's played d4, this dark squared bishop is really very restricted. So you know, black doesn't really mind giving up the light squared bishop that much, giving up its two bishops, simply because it's just going to be very hard for yeah, for white to do much with its pieces. It's better for white, but Leela was drawing this in reasonably good comfort. Of course, we've also got ideas of the rooks coming into the 7th, so black's got quite a lot of activity on the queen side. Bishop d4, Leela was not at all happy about this. and it was playing bishop c6. Now, in all fairness, my idea was actually to play king h2 in this position, which is not so bad. The idea is bishop g2, I go rook f2, and then I'm going to play rook g1 and attack on the g file. Not stupid at all, although you know, the point is it doesn't have to be taken. But if we just have a look at Leela's main line, that was queen g4. And then now Leela was actually taking on e5 and playing queen d7. Surprised me a little bit that that it was willing to take on e5, but yeah, it's just got a very concrete purpose. I mean, actually, by playing bishop c6, you've brought the queen back from the h file, and you're actually also threatening this move rook b4, pinning the bishop to the queen. And well, this is actually a little bit awkward for white. Yeah, I mean, I think knight e4 was what was the best move. Takes rook c8, rook c8, queen e4, knight f8, and Leela wasn't seeing any particular danger here for black. I mean, white's a pawn up, but yeah. I mean, there's no pass pawns or everything. It's pretty hard to make something of it, and you know, black's got plenty of entry points on the queen side to get activity. Again, you know, I mean, I think you'd probably rather be white, but still, it's you know, at this engine level, it's no advantage whatsoever. So what did Eagle want, and what did Stockfish and Koivisto want when I was playing? Well, actually, what Stockfish and Koivisto wanted mainly was this move, rook f3, intending rook g3 and attacking the pawn on g7. I mean, it's you know, quite an elegant way, I suppose, of defending the pawn on g2 against, you know, the battery along the a8 h1 diagonal, and also attacking the black king. The one thing about it is that, funnily enough, you know, I'm sure when I was chess professional, young player, I would have done this move in a flash. But you know, what I don't. But actually, you know, analysing it, I barely considered it. You know, I'm getting to be an old man, I think. But I think, you know, the reason I don't like it, or was rather worried about it, was that it really stretches the white pieces. I mean, here in this position, white's position is very compact, and you know, it's hard to really see black creating any openings against these minor pieces protecting each other and the rooks protecting each other. As soon as you play something like rook f3 to g3, you're really into calculation territory, because you've weakened this this structure here. Yeah, you've got to make sure that the threats that you're creating here are going to be big enough to distract black. Actually, you know, I do wonder a little bit, because although, you know, the evaluation was at plus 1.1 or something like that, I mean, actually, if you look at the games, nothing much happened. So bishop f8 was, this is a Koivisto against Stockfish. E takes d6, bishop d6, bishop d4, f6, queen g4, queen f7, rook f1, bishop f8, black keeping it lovely and tight at the back, king h8, queen e3, bishop h5, bishop a1, rook b5, and black was, you know, defending very, very comfortably. And yeah, I mean, it's an extra pawn, but yeah, I mean, there's not really much opportunity to make inroads. So yeah, not 100% sure about that, but I did find it quite interesting that you know, that this was a move that that I really, you know, barely considered when analysing, you know, yesterday. I mean, it was just nah, stretching my pieces too far. Whereas, yeah, thinking about it, I'm pretty sure it would have been my automatic reaction, yeah, 20 years ago. Eagle didn't do that. Eagle played a move that Stockfish also played a couple of times, and that's this move, rook a1, and actually trying to make some advantage of some of white's queenside control. So rook a7 is quite interesting, and after rook a8, rook b1, queen a6. What you've actually done, you've forced the queen off this diagonal. So this coordination of the queen and the light squared bishop is not going to happen. On the other hand, what's happened is the queen's now attacking a concrete target. So here Eagle played quite aggressively, actually. Bishop d4, queen d3, rook d1, queen c2, e takes d6. And obviously black can't take back because something bad would happen, probably starting with bishop takes g7. So yeah, I mean, in some ways, you know, this is quite a dangerous plan. I mean, it's really shaking black's position. What I don't particularly like is that, you know, having the pawn on e5, you really have the knight h7 as a bad piece. When you go e takes d6, black takes the chance to go knight f6, and actually all of a sudden all of black's pieces are quite active, and obviously you've made inroads into the white position, and yeah, this queen is also well, it's now a hyperactive stockfish queen, so not really sure about it really, but yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I can't really, you know, I didn't really find, or my engines didn't really find any particular way, you know, to make a big advantage for white anyway. So bishop e5 played, queen h7, typical sort of stockfish queen. You know, sort of bouncing off the angles of the board to come back to defend. And here the queen's defending g7, which also makes this knight active as well. So queen g3, rook a3, and black making excellent use of all this empty space on the queen side to activate its major pieces. And I mean, to be honest, you know, you see this and you don't really feel that black's going to have any problems in general. And yeah, I mean, actually what's happening is that Eagle starts getting hit by all sorts of stuff, although, you know, it's not giving black an advantage or anything, but I would definitely say that in a human game I would much rather be black than white in this position, because you're getting pinned and attacked all over the place. So queen g6 activates the queen. It's looking at g2. And now a move that all my engines played. I mean, to be honest, if a human player played this, I'd assume it was a time trouble mistake. Rook b7 attacking the bishop, bishop c6, hitting b7 and g2, and then the rook has to go back to b2. I mean, that just seems like a waste of time to me. But of course, what you're doing, you're drawing the bishop away from the blockade of the d-pawn. So d7 is now a threat. You know, that's the idea, but still. Rook b8 was played by Leela, so obviously hitting the rook. Rook b8 allows queen g2 mate. Rook bd2, and now rook bb3, and this looks incredibly scary to me, I have to say. And you really have the feeling that black's starting to yeah, to make a lot of this. Also because you know, it's not very clear. I mean, the black king is very, very safe, whereas yeah, you know, the white king is under kind of fire somehow. But Eagle finds a very nice way to well, to clarify the situation, and we get this sudden burst of tactics at the end. So d7, f6, and now bishop d6. So we are hitting a3, and we are uncovering an attack on e6 at the same time. However, c3 is hanging, so we get rook c3, queen e6 check, and now king h7, forced actually. If you go queen f7, there's this cunning idea, queen e8 check, just exchanging a piece the way that you want it. And then after bishop e8, we go bishop a3, and well, we've taken the rook, the exchange, and we're also uncovering an attack on the bishop on d8. So that's pretty good for white. So after queen e6 check, we go king h7, and now bishop takes a3. And at first sight, it's looking pretty good for white, because rook takes a3 is met by queen takes c6. However, Leela has seen further. Queen g3 check, king h1, and now a very unobvious move here. So, and that is the lovely little idea, queen h4, which I really do like. So queen h4 threatening rook takes h3 check with imminent mate. So yeah, white has actually got a couple of ideas. King g1 was played by Eagle. You can rook d3, queen f2, threatening mate here. Rook d5 ended up in a draw in a stockfish Koivistal game. But Eagle played king g1 and exposed itself to a bewildering array of pins, I have to say. So bishop b6 check, rook d4, queen g3, and it looks absolutely awful for white. I mean, pin, attack, attack. However, it just all does fit together, and of course, you know, the saviour for white is this pass pawn on d7. And so queen e2 played, bishop f3. Just imagine facing this in time trouble. Getting hit with another pin. Obviously the pawn is pinned, and queen takes allows rook takes. But queen f2 here, and well, actually we got the draw adjudication, which was kind of a little bit early, but actually everything's being exchanged. We play queen f2, we go bishop takes d1, threatening bishop d4 check, but then d8 queen saves white, takes, and amazingly everything is hanging. Rook a3, rook d1, and we've got a rook and 3 versus rook and 2, which is just a draw. Great game again, you know, a draw, but lots and lots of content. Yeah, I mean, I do like this moment very much. You know, just giving away the pawn, just not caring about the rook's pawn, finding that it's of minimal value, of minimal impact to the rest of black's position in the short term. Yeah, you know, again, see this a lot in engine games, but always find it impressive when I see it. Yeah, I mean, I liked the way that Leela played a lot, you know, with the queenside counterplay there. And yeah, I mean, I thought this was a very interesting moment here. Yeah, interested to see what my thoughts were, and yeah, what the engines thought. But in general, you know, I think that black is actually doing quite all right here. I mean, for what it's worth, you know, this would be the sort of position that I would very, very happily play as black. You know, happily give up a pawn for the two bishops and some general counterplay. Pardon me. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that game. If you enjoyed the video, why not give a like or subscribe to the channel? Need more subscribers. Or take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which has got masses of analysis like this, and also huge chapters on training with engines and getting the most out of working with engines. But otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching this video, and hopefully see you at the next one.